Hey guys, IcyCat here, and this is the operator profiling guide for NOMAD. I'm going to go over her loadout and her non-lethal knockdown ability, as well as how to get the most from it, plus some tips and tricks you might not know about next. This is NOMAD, the new Moroccan attacker that comes with Operation Wind Bastion. She's a medium 2-speed, 2-armor operator, and her ability is the air jab launcher. We'll begin by taking a look at her weapons loadout. First is the AK-74M assault rifle. It does 44 damage with a 40-round magazine and a rate of fire of 650. It's an overall average AR, but it does have one interesting feature. It has a unique reflex sight. The external housing has a different form factor to it, although the actual green triangle reticle is the same as the other reflex sights that are already in the game. All of her other sights are identical to the normal ones, only this reflex sight has a different shape to it. Next up is the ARX-200. It hits just a little bit harder at 47 damage with a slightly faster rate of fire of 750, but comes with a more limited magazine size with only 20 rounds. There's also a very slight difference in how these guns recover from using NOMAD's air jab launcher. As seen here, the AK-74M is ready to fire just the tiniest bit faster after reloading the launcher. That recovery difference may not be much, but sometimes every little bit helps. Her sidearm is the 44 mag. This thing packs a punch with 74 damage, though it does have a limited 7-round magazine before reloading. The most obvious thing about it is that it has this massive scope on top. It's got a really clean look in game and allows you to line up shots quickly and easily. Even after a heavier recoil increase after the test server, it's still pretty easy to line up multiple shots downrange. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this winds up getting even more of a recoil nerf in later updates. Her secondary gadgets are going to be a choice between flashbangs or breaching charges, with no real obvious advantage to either one, as it really just comes down to playstyle. The non-lethal air jab is her primary ability. It fires out a kind of proximity detonated compressed air mine. The target does not have to be moving for it to trigger. Firing one that lands next to a defender on a camera will set it off just as easily as an operator that runs into a pre-placed one. When the gadget is selected, she will turn on this yellow laser pointer. Everyone can see it on both teams, so everyone will know where you're aiming it if they see it. You can see when you shoot it that for just a second or two, this giant white sphere highlights on the center of where the device goes. That's the proximity area of effect. Any defender that crosses into that highlighted zone will trigger it to go off. Now, only NOMAD can see this. Not even other attackers can see the placement area of effect when this shows up. It's got a delay on arming, so even if you fire it at someone's feet, it's still going to take a second or two to actually detonate. But when you do, it sends them flying. Targets are knocked away from the device several feet and land on their butts, unable to return fire for a couple of precious seconds while they get back up again. No damage is taken from the knockdown itself, unless it goes off on a rooftop or something and you actually fly far enough out that you would actually take fall damage from the height alone. But the knockback itself isn't inherently something that causes damage. If you're next to any soft breach surfaces, you will smash through them. It's pretty fun to see, but it doesn't cause any damage even if you do hit a wall or break through one. It's not just soft walls though, it can also throw you through barricades. But if it's a window, it will not throw you out the window, only into the barricade, and then you'll stop even though the barricade itself will break. There's not really any way to propel people out of windows using this. It just seems like they'll always hit the sill and never actually go over it. This also applies to other surfaces like smashing through deployable shields or even castle barricades. Like I said, it's actually a lot of fun to watch a hapless defender go flying through various things when it does happen. One soft surface that doesn't seem to work are trapdoors. Even placing a charge centered directly above a defender won't provide force to knock them down through the hatch. It still sends them outward. No matter what we tried, we couldn't get one to send them crashing through one of these. Now, for those wondering, you cannot crawl your way past one of these either. It will still send you flying. The only exception is if you're in a down but not out state. Where the air jab really shines is dealing with digging out defenders that are anchoring or holding an angle in a known position. Popping that charge next to them and then quickly engaging while they're vulnerable for that real short window of opportunity is where you'll find some great utility with this gadget. It also works well as a trap for roamers and can alert you to their presence. In this example, I heard one of the mines go off, and I knew I only had 2 out there, so I knew to expect someone in the room where the other one was located, and it served as an improvised motion sensor. The mines stay wherever you place them until they go off, unless someone shoots it or something. You cannot pick them up again once it's deployed, so if you change your mind about where you placed one, you're kind of stuck with it there and you can't take it back again. So be sure of your placements if you can help it. Another thing to be aware of is that while only defenders can trigger the proximity detonation, anyone close enough when it goes off will be caught up in it, including yourself or another friendly attacker. The proximity trigger is team-specific, but the area of effect blast is not. This can especially be a problem for shield operators, as it leaves them vulnerable when they're knocked down. Fortunately, the get back up animation pulls the shield out right away and leaves players automatically in a crouch stance, leaving a shield operator mostly protected when they do. Because the time to get back up is the same for both players, you won't be able to get any particular advantage if you were knocked down also, but any defenders outside of the blast area could be able to take advantage of the opening it leaves. Now this will even knock down a fully extended Monty. When he recovers a second later, he'll default to that same crouch stance, so he'd have to re-engage the full extension again. Because the air jab mine is so small, it's pretty easy to conceal it too. You can carve out small holes to hide it in, just remember that it works on line of sight proximity detonation. So while this makes it less visible, it also means that defenders may have to get much closer to contact that line of sight before it will go off. That said, these kinds of concealment can be very difficult for a defender to even know they're going to set it off. Even the tight spacing in between floor beams will still provide a more than effective blast and allow you to hide the mine in an otherwise wide open space that can be almost impossible to see until they've already set it off. With a little careful aim, you can even use this to shoot into drone holes, though you sometimes need to aim just a little bit lower than you'd think so you don't catch the outer edge of the vent. This can be a handy way to interrupt anyone attempting to bandit trick. Those extra couple of seconds can be all it takes to give enough time to prevent it, and is super handy in places like Snowmobile Garage on Chalet or similar spots with vents next to popular bandit trick spots. Now you can also use this to deny some objective retakes. Placing one somewhere close to the bomb diffuser can give a small window of opportunity to take out that defender before they can disarm it, or knock a defender back out of a secure area room retake once they contest it for a second and force them back out. Depending on if there's any time left on the clock or not, you could force a win. One interesting thing about the mine is that the proximity sensor will not go off if that character's feet aren't touching the ground. This means you can't trigger it mid-fall or mid-vault. It doesn't matter how you place it. If your feet aren't touching the floor, it will wait until they are before it will go off. This means it is possible for a vaulting character to get off some shots before the detonation if they shoot during the vault animation. This also applies to ladders. The mine won't go off until the operator's feet are on the ground. While on the ladder, it counts as sort of an in-between state and it won't detonate. One thing that people think you can easily do is to juggle an air jab launch into a claymore and essentially get a kill out of it. Now this can work, sort of. There's a lot of variables that seem to go into the direction the defender actually goes flying, in which it's not often as clearly directional as you might want. More often than not, it pushes the defender too early for a clean sideways push, meaning that you'll send them into a door frame before they can entirely clear the threshold, or it'll send them flying onto a bit of an odd angle instead of cleanly sideways as you'd hoped. That's not to say it isn't possible. It can be done. It's just finicky. You have to get things just right. You can improve your odds, though, by manipulating a game mechanic we talked about earlier. The fact that it won't detonate until a character's feet touch the ground. If you place an air jab to claymore juggle on the other side of a vaultable spot, you're much more likely to get a successful result due to that clean landing before it will go off. This is especially true on window hop-outs, though oftentimes if you can set up a multi-gadget juggle on a vaultable surface, then maybe it would have just been easier to stick the claymore there without the air jab in the first place. Now let's talk about operator-specific interactions. This thing is obviously great against Clash. In fact, it's almost an anti-Clash gadget. The knockback forces her shield onto her back. She can't return to crouch with the shield up in front of her like Monty and Blitz can, because her shield can only be used in full standing mode with its full extension, so she'd need another second or two to re-engage the shield, leaving her extra vulnerable for that few moments. The biggest thing to be aware of is that you do have that 1.5 seconds or so arming delay, so if you fire it right at her, there's a chance she could back off before it fully arms if she's quick enough. You might have to anticipate her movements depending on the situation. Now, with it working so well on Clash, you might assume it would do just as well with Tachanka. Unfortunately, it does not knock him off the turret. The Lord remains fully mounted and loaded. Now, if you're fast enough, you can actually interrupt a Cav from doing an interrogation. The margin of error is not a lot, but if done correctly, you could turn the tables on her and take her out before rescuing your teammate. Alright, now let's talk about counters. Although Mute can jam many devices from going off, the air jab is not one of them. Even fully in the radius of a jamming field, the proximity sensor will still trigger as it normally would. But you can find some protection from Jaeger's ADS units. They'll shoot down the projectile just like any other grenade, as long as they have line of sight to its flight path. Other typical interactions with gadgets work as expected. Firing it into an electrified surface would break it. Maestro can shoot it with his turret if he sees it. Anyone can shoot one to destroy one with its small but highly visible yellow light, and of course any explosive area of effect like impact grenades or similar will take a placed air jab out too. Nomad's got some interesting tricks up her sleeve with this device. She's the first attacker that has the primary ability to pre-place non-lethal traps to counter roamers and give her a heads up on a flank. This is what makes them different from the lethal secondary claymore traps that attackers can put down. Alternatively, instead of pre-placing them, she can use them as either a direct counter device or dig out defenders holding an angle or anchoring on objective. Some may think the ability causing a defender to not be able to return fire for a couple of seconds might be OP, but the defenders get back up again very quickly, and attackers will have to be very fast to take advantage of that 2-second window of opportunity. And admittedly, leaving a character unable to return fire even for a second or two is something that is very strong and difficult to balance. Between being an almost direct counter to Clash and then being hard countered by Jaeger's ADS devices, there's some strong strategies that balance out on both sides of the equation for picking her. That wraps up this operator profile for Nomad. Be sure to look out for Kaid's guide and profile that I'll be putting up tomorrow, as well as more Wind Bastion content in the coming days. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Be sure to click that notification button so you're alerted as soon as I make new content available. You can also follow me at IcyCat25 on either Facebook or Twitter. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.